I started out flying at getting interested in aviation at a relatively early age. My grandfather was an early aviator who flew balloons in World War I, actually a couple times parachuted out of burning balloons. Hydrogen, it seemed like a great idea at the time.
Burned well.
But after he got back from World War I, he bought an airplane and started barnstorming and doing mail delivery and newspaper, and stuff like that. Eventually fell in love with the daughter of a guy who ran the mine company in Jibo, Wyoming, which is a ghost town now. Then it started his family, eventually flew for Baker Oil Tools and stuff like that for a good part of his career, was chief pilot for them. He flew, I have pictures of him flying in Orion that was built like 5 or 6 units after the Spirit of St. Louis. But you could see what the Spirit of St. Louis would look like if it didn't have a massive gas tank as most of the cabin. In fact, the connection there is he also flew. He was the chief. There were 2 lines at Willow Run, building the B-24 Liberators, and he was the chief test pilot for one line, and Lindbergh was for the other, and they got checked out in the planes together. It's kind of interesting stories behind all that. So I heard a lot of these aviation stories growing up, and my immediate family, my dad, and was not a pilot. My uncle was, but he lived pretty far away. But my dad worked for a company that owned several airplanes for their business, and he used them as a utility, as a time machine. They had hotels all over Southern California, Northern California, Nevada, Arizona, and so they would fly out in the morning, go do their business there, and come back. And on one of these trips when I was 14, flying from Fullerton Airport to Sacramento, my dad invited my mom and I to come with us on the trip during spring break. And I got put in the right seat, and Hank Worthington, who was a former MAF jungle pilot and now worked as a company pilot there for the hotel company, basically we took off. He got to cruise, showed me how all the controls work, showed me how the VOR needle was, and said, okay, you're my autopilot for this trip. And I got to fly a twin-engine Aero Commander 500 from Fullerton to Sacramento, and I was hooked. I was absolutely hooked.
Did you hold elevation?
I did. I held the needle, held the elevation. He, of course, I'm sure he was helping trim it up and, keeping me there. But it was a nice, the longest young eagle flight I had ever been on, anyway. After that, I knew I wanted to fly, and when I got into college, I got a job with a company that aerospace company, and the 2 owners of the company also owned the FBO in Fullerton, California, Liberty Aviation at the time. And so in 1986, I got my license there. Shortly after that, I got a Cerritos air disaster happened. A guy had a heart attack in a Cherokee Archer, came down, hit Aeromexico airplane, bodies full all over Cerritos, California. And as the government is, and the FAA was and is kind of not as much anymore. It's like they're always fighting the last battle. Whatever embarrasses them, it's like, oh, we got to fix this. How do you fix a guy who had a heart attack, who had no history of this, suddenly doing this, above the Bravo, coming through it? It was not a fixable event, but they started busting everybody for anything, and I got a call the tower. I knew that I hadn't done anything wrong, but FAA sent me a letter with the wrong tail number and the wrong date on it, and my lawyer said, just tell them you didn't fly that plane and you didn't fly on that date. They did. They got my logbooks from the thing. They took me in again, asked me, they told me this date, this plane. I said, don't know. They say, you're a liar. We're going to take this and do everything we can. They offered me a 30-day suspension, but I knew I didn't do this. But my lawyer was like, shut up. I don't want you to volunteer anything. So 2 years later, after spending all my aviation money fighting the FAA to avoid not flying for 30 days, I had basically not flown for almost 2 years and spent all that money on my thing. We went into a judge They looked at all the radar tapes, and basically the FAA had this gap in the radar tapes that we had got during pre-trial, being able to get all the radio tapes, and basically it proved beyond doubt that unless I could go over Mach 2.5 in a Cherokee Archer, I couldn't have done it. The bad guy got put on the wrong guy, and so basically the FAA canceled my IFR and commercial and everything I wanted to do back in college because of this, bull crap violation that never happened. At any rate, so that left for an intermission until about 1999. Working at Microsoft, stock was doing great. Got back flying again, got current, and decided with my growing family I needed something that I could go visit my wife's family in California. And so we went to buy a P210, 6-passenger pressurized plane, and got rented one from at Boeing Field or whatever. Got all the insurance ready, it all on the ramp. $20,000, split half of a $20,000 pre-inspection and annual to get everything fixed on the plane before the check. It was going to go to the avionics shop, new paint, new interior, all premium setup and everything. And between the flight in Renton and Boeing Field, the plane broke. 3 different things fell apart that I wasn't planning to fix. And so I just sat there on the runway and just tore up the cashier's check and just backed out of the transaction at that point. After sort of having to do the rental thing is just inconvenient and expensive and wasn't really kind of meeting my needs. I couldn't go to use it for a family trip because they want to charge you a huge amount of block time for the time you're away with the plane. So essentially, the mission that I had for it really wasn't going to be met with that. And so we ended up getting a motorhome and driving to California instead of doing that. And my flying ended up being spent more in simulators and RC flying. And eventually, 2001 happened. They shut down the airspace for a while. I lost my currency and basically put things aside for a while. I bought plans for an RV9, and was going to buy the tail kit for it, but got building an observatory, astronomical observatory with a dome and automation and everything, and that spent about 2.5 years. And when I was done with that, my wife said, no more big projects for a while. And so that takes us up to about 2017. I think it was 2017. I'd been taking the kids to Arlington fly-in every year, and my wife liked it because she got to have no kids for a day. I loved being around the airplanes and stuff, but they like the cotton candy and all the snacks and the rides and stuff. But one year I took my wife to Las Vegas for her birthday instead of going to the fly-in, and I came back to find my 16-year-old or 15, 16-year-old son very angry at me, and I'm like. He said, we missed the fly-in. I'm like, oh, what's this about? And I said, I didn't realize it was anything more than cotton candy and, rides or whatever for you. And he goes, no, I really like going there, the airplanes. I really want us to get an airplane. I want to be a pilot. I want to be an airline pilot, or fly airplanes, for a living. So I needed to go to Chicago for business and at the Adler Planetarium, and it's not that far from Oshkosh. So the end of the month, we headed off to Oshkosh. We stopped by Chicago, did my work, and then drove over to Oshkosh and went through everything. Started looking around and decided, hey, yeah, let's do this plane. So in a lot of this. A lot of these slides here I did for the Arlington fly-in after the plane was built for one of the talks a couple years ago when we still had one in person and all that. So part of the whole thing that we looked at is do we rent, own, buy, look at club ownership? Are we looking at experimental versus certified? What type of plane I want, whether it's a STOL, cruising, figuring out what our mission was. I always kind of knew your plane, what plane you pick is about what the mission that it is, and you really kind of have to know, what you want and what you're doing on. We looked at a whole bunch of planes, what people were selling. We got very interested in Oshkosh that year at a light sport plane that had glass panel. It was modeled a carbon fiber clone of a 182 with a Rotax engine in it. Wow. built in Czech, yeah. Yeah. But when it came to actually buying the plane, it was like, send us $100,000, and in 7 months we'll call you. You send us the rest of the money, and we'll put it in a crate. And then you get the crate. You'll have to put the wings on, and then you can go fly it. But it's like, well, you can't. The insurance didn't want to insure it. It's like you're giving away $125,000,
wondering if you're going
to get it with no legal recourse on it. It's like I've been scammed by people from Czech Republic before on eBay. I don't. For me, it's like I'm not sure, like if I can trust this, right? And the risk that was involved. So one thing I did know is that I saw what was the new HDX panel from Dynon at the time. And I thought that was pretty marvelous, and so I knew I wanted something with that panel. I wanted modern avionics, and so that was something that was important to me. And like adding that to a existing certified airplane, well, they didn't have the certified version at that time, but getting that equivalent avionics was like more than building an entire home built. So I knew that I kind of narrowed it down. I wanted to get a plane that I could invest sweat equity in. I wanted to be able to, do my own work on it rather than pay AMPs. So I looked at like what I wanted, to be able to have something that would be a TAA trainer for my son with a new technically advanced aircraft the FAA asked for it now instead of complex time for training for commercial and such, and wanted to be able to have an IFR platform, and to be able to have, I have too many kids now. Even for B210 wouldn't have worked with 5 kids, right? So now I wanted to be able to, go with my wife and I, or a kid and I, and be able to go and do trips backcountry camping or whatever. Joined the EAA chapter. I'd already been a member of EAA for a long time. Got set up with connecting with other local builders and things like that, finding out what other people were doing, and just listening to what other people's stories were, and finding out what seemed good for me, what worked out. Watching a lot of YouTube videos, and one of the first things I saw was, of course, like watching. All these guys landing on the sides of mountain tops and, on little, 100-foot sandbars and everything like that. And I'm like, that's crazy. They would never let me do that in a rental plane. No, that's dangerous. No one should do this. I'm not going to get a plane capable of that, or my son might go out and do that crazy stuff, So you got to see what we ended up with. So I looked at like what are the factors of like the time investment, how soon I want to fly, are my relationships ready for that type of time commitment? I'd had the wife say before, no more big projects for a while. Do I have the skills to do this? Do I have the discipline and commitment? And do I have the ability to time box the amount of work that I have? I mean, so many people I know is like, most of what I've seen about everything I look at in used home builds is like, ran out of time, lost my medical, everything like that. So many kits started versus completions. I wanted something that I knew that I was going to get the crates and a year later fly it. And then 6 months after that, take it to Oshkosh. That was sort of my plan, maybe a little over aggressive. But I didn't want to be into a 20-year build. I wanted to be able to build a plane, enjoying doing that. So looked at Do I have a workshop? Is it convenient? Can I just walk to it anytime I have some time? I need to be transporting a lot of big parts and everything like that. Can't commute or you'll never get it done. Looking at the tools that were about it, the funding for, getting about a third for the airframe, a third for the engine, about a third for the avionics for budget-wise. Can you afford to do that? And can you afford to build it over time? There's this old, I don't know, Hank Williams or something about, I built it one piece at a time and it didn't cost me a dime, where he was stealing parts from the his auto company. What's that?
The Cadillac.
Yeah. So he built it one piece at a time, But it's like if you just pick it off in little pieces. For me, it was, the other thing was even a hangar. It's like the waiting lists on hangars nowadays. I'm on a waiting list for hangar in Anacortes, and I'll be dead before I clear it. And I'm not that old, but I'll still be dead by the time it's cleared. If you take the list length,
somebody else will get that hangar.
Well, I think that's the other thing is how many other people the list ahead will die before So I looked at what am I going to do in terms of if I decided I'm building a kit, which kit? What's the support like? How stable are they? How often do their buyers finish? What's the track record for safety? Do the products fit the mission that you want to buy? One of the things that, and I got, I used to share a hangar in Everett with a couple of guys with RV6s. It was perfect. My huge, tall bush plane went right in between their wingtips, and so we got a 2-plane hangar into a 3-plane hangar and split the rent, and we all got along like Three's Company. But it's nothing against vans, but I looked at just the total amount of time it would take to build it, and just sort of the prescriptive nature of your building, like a remote factory builder for this spec of, And for me, I wanted a little more flexibility in terms of what I wanted, and I wanted something that would go together with a sort of a minimal amount of thing. And I also didn't want a plane that fast. I didn't need to go anywhere that quick. But if I needed to land with the inability of space, that many extra knots on you can make the difference between survivable energies and not. So that became an issue too, is the types of missions going out over a lot of trees, over a lot of mountains and stuff like that, that finding something, a plane that might survive an accident better. Looked at RVs, Sonics, Glass Air, Kit Fox, Zenith. I wanted to be flying in less than 2 years. I didn't want to do a fast build or builder's assistance, and I didn't want to spend a huge amount of money to be 2 weeks and have a plane. That's just that's sort of like spending all the money of buying a factory plane without getting the benefits of the building. And I didn't, I didn't want something that would be a lot of bucking or fabric or fiberglass or things like that. As much as I love composites, my skin doesn't like them. My wife and I watched this video where a couple of guys from Zenith Aircraft built a wing in real time from all the stuff that came in the box. They just put it out on the table and they went bang, bang, bang there. And the videos were about an hour and a half, and they have a completely done wing between the two of them. My wife said, we could do that. And I think that was a huge part. She does, but married. And so one of the things they had is instead of shipping you a rudder kit, you can get that, but you can go to the factory and they basically walk you through it on a bench with a group of a whole bunch of other people, and they wine and dine you. Well, I don't know about the wine, but they get you lunch and a little banquet, with all the people and the owner of the company and the reps and stuff like that. They give you a tour. You get to fly their planes with and tour the factory, meet all the people you're going to work with and stuff like that. And we built this rudder, and it was literally We were done in less than the first day of the 2-day workshop. And we're like, now what?
Or Mexico, Missouri?
We did in Mexico, Missouri, at the Zenith factory itself. And so my son and I went and did this, and we're like, yeah, this is something I definitely can do. Getting the familiarity with these people, seeing them as human beings, seeing the business that they were running and what a clean shop they were at, and seeing real inventory, stuff shipping out, things getting crated up and stuff. It gave me a lot of confidence to write that big check to basically buy the whole meal deal for the kit, finishing kit and everything like that. The planes that we looked at, so one of which was the 650 Zodiac. It's an LSA 1320 pound. You have to get in from the top. My wife's missing a kneecap. She tried getting into these planes, our vans and everything like that. And so this is another thing that killed the vans is like anything you had to climb in from the canopy on the top, she couldn't handle because she couldn't get herself back up with her knee, couldn't leverage, she couldn't put her weight on her knee to get back up. So then we looked at the 750 Cruzer, and this is the one that we decided would be our choice. It had it was fast enough to be able to go on a longer cross country without, it's 40-50% faster than the STOL version of the plane at top cruising. So it was a good compromise in terms of being able to have something that's buildable and a decent two-seater. It's not the STOL version, but it's still, the factory reports it 350-foot takeoff and landings stock. So I was like, well, that would be considered STOL for almost anything else, but they have another plane that will do it 150 feet, so that's their really extreme version. We looked at the factory support on there, and literally, I would often be on the phone with their factory like 2 or 3 times a week, asking questions, looking about a route of the issues is like, you'd run into issues. They weren't perfect. Their manuals were not as absolutely comprehensive as the vans were. There were things, but one of the things is the biggest changes were they were constantly updating and improving their kit and making it easier to build, more components that were more pre-drilled, things that were ready. And so sometimes you'd look at a step and it's like, it looks like this is already done, And so you'd have to be just clarifying. But the support from being able to get a hold of a human being, was absolutely amazing. And this is one of Zenith's claim to fame is that everything is pulled rivets, and so it goes together amazingly fast. We did more prep in terms of like putting Cortex primer to avoid, electrolysis and, I didn't know that I'd be moving to Anacortes, but now that I have, living on an island or surrounded by salt water, it was good that I invested that time. But one of the things is that they are an airframe company. The fuel system, you can get a few engine packages that they specify, but pretty much, the panel is up to you, the electronics, fuel system, the firewall forward, that's you. They can provide, there's like 6 or 7 choices of engines that you can do and everything like that. And it's not like a lot of kit manufacturers where, like, you get a Sling TSI, there's one way to build it, and that's it, and no deviation from it.